By now you should be very familiar with the articles. You should be able to decline the articles entirely without much trouble and recognize the articles and recognize what case they are. This lesson is going to introduce you to pronominal articles. And what this means is that the article, all by itself, without a noun, is going to be used as a pronoun. So pronominal is just the adjectival form of pronoun. This pronominal article, the use of the article just as a pronoun, is actually how the article, or what looks like the article, is used in Homer. So when you get a little more advanced in Greek and you decide to take a look at Homer, you're going to notice there are a lot of articles without nouns. Those aren't nouns. Those are just articles that you can translate as he, she, or it, or they in the plural. And depending on the case of the article, that's going to tell you what case the pronoun is. But there are two particular uses that you need to take note of, two idiomatic uses of pronominal articles in Greek, and that's what this lesson is going to cover. The first of these is with the particles men and de. You should be familiar by now with these particles that begin sentences. Sometimes men is translated as on the one hand and de on the other. Now, if you take an article like hoi and you add a men, and then in your second sentence you again use the hoi and use de, so here masculine plural nominative, we're going to translate this as some men, depending on whatever the article is, and then the hoide is others. So hoi men, hoide, some others. And we could do this with the singular. We could use feminine if we wanted. Hey men, one woman, heide, and another. Or we could even use neuters. To men, one thing, and another thing. Tode, to men, tode. So let's take a look at this in use. So we can say here, homen fuge, hode dioke. So here's our pronominal article, here's our men, pronominal article, and de, and we can say, well, one man flees and the other man pursues. So we've got this natural contrast that men and de like to use, and the articles being used just as pronouns. Haimen apothneskusin, haide fugusin. That should be misspelled these here. Few and few. So some women, high men, so we've got a plural feminine there. Some women die, haide fugusin. Others, there's our de, others flee. Or they don't need to be necessarily nominative as they are in these two. They could be accusative. Tous men keluo, I order some. So there's our men, and de, indicating some kind of contrast, some kind of comparison. And here's our pronominal article. So tous men keluo, I order some men. Tous te petho, I persuade others. So there's our tous. So when you see the article plus men and de, understand that there's a contrast going on, and we can treat that in English as we do with some and others, or one and another, depending on if it's singular or plural. One and another. So that's one way that the pronominal article is used. The other thing to watch is without the men and just the de by itself. And what this is going to do, so you're going to have an article plus de, article and de, and then your sentence continues. And this means this is a, this shows a shift in subject. Usually from the previous sentence. That is, there's something in the previous sentence, maybe a direct object, which now in the second sentence, where which begins with the article and de, is now going to become the subject. So let's take a look at this. Ho poietes pethe tu strategus. The poet persuades the generals. Okay, so in our first sentence, perfectly normal, the poet persuades the generals. But then in our second sentence, we have an article followed by de, hoide, and there was no hoimen to begin with. That says, we're shifting subjects, and the only other thing we have in the previous sentence, which is plural and nominative, plural and masculine, is the strategos, the generals. So the poet persuades the generals, and they obey. So this hoi is actually picking up whatever the noun is in the previous sentence and shifting that subject. Or ho poietes makatai te adelphe, the poet fights his sister. Right? Heide, all right, so we have our pronominal article and a de saying, okay, we're shifting subjects. Well, what's feminine and singular in the previous sentence? The sister. But she, and remember de can be and or but she, u bulatai makastai, she does not want to fight. So the poet is fighting his sister, but she does not wish to fight. So when you see that article plus de starting a sentence, and there is no article in men in the previous sentence, know that there's a shift in subject. And the gender of that subject will be indicated by the article.